In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world grows still and time itself seems to slow, imagine a lone rider moving across an endless stretch of frost-covered grass. The sky above him is gray and heavy, the northern wind carrying whispers of ancient wars long forgotten. But this rider, he is not forgotten. Behind him lies a trail of burning villages. Before him spreads the untouched world he plans to claim. On this cold steppe night, the man who would one day bring nearly 40% of humanity to its knees closes his eyes. This is not just history. This is the birth of a force of nature. Tonight, as you drift slowly into sleep, we travel back more than 800 years into the heart of the Mongol steppe to follow the rise of a boy abandoned, betrayed, and hunted, who transformed into Genghis Khan, the greatest conqueror the world has ever known. Breathe slowly. Let the wind of the steppe guide your imagination, and let the story begin. The Mongol night was colder than stone. The stars above looked like shards of broken glass scattered across a black ocean. In the middle of this wilderness, a small boy named Temujin, thin, trembling, barely 10, walked barefoot across the frozen ground. His father lay dead, poisoned by rival tribes. His family had been cast out, left to starve by their own people. Temujin's breath rose in pale clouds, his stomach clenched in hunger. Every sound in the darkness felt like a creature waiting to devour him. But deep within that fear lived something else. A fire. A strange, unyielding fire. His mother, Hoylin, whispered as she pulled her children close, "A wolf has no tribe. A wolf survives because it must." Temujin listened, and something inside him hardened, quietly, permanently. One evening, as the wind hissed past their tiny shelter of branches, Temujin's older half-brother Bektar stole food. Dry cheese, a bit of meat, food the family desperately needed. Temujin's anger burned hot. This wasn't just hunger, this was betrayal. In a world where betrayal meant death, there was only one punishment. The next morning, Temujin stood over Bektar's still body. His hands shook, his heart pounded. He had committed his first killing. And that night, as the stars glowed faintly above, Temujin realized a truth that would shape the entire world. If someone threatens your survival, remove them completely. A seed had been planted, not of cruelty, but of absolute necessity. When Temujin was still a boy, a rival clan, the Taichiud, ambushed him. They tied a wooden collar around his neck and forced him to live like an animal. Days passed. Nights dragged on endlessly. He could barely sleep, could barely breathe, but his mind, sharp and quiet, refused to break. One night, under a pale moon, he escaped, silent as smoke, relentless as a storm. For the first time, he felt it. This world could not cage him. Years passed. Temujin grew taller, stronger, harder. But he was never alone. His childhood friend, Jamuka, noble-born and graceful, stood beside him like a brother. They swore an oath under the open sky. "We are Andas, blood brothers. We will rise together." But the steppe has its own destiny, and destiny had different plans for the two boys. Temujin found more than survival. He found love. Her name was Borte. With calm eyes and a quiet heart, she believed in him when the world didn't even know his name. In the silent nights beside her, Temujin felt a peace he had never known. But peace never lasts long in a land ruled by horses and blood. Within months, Borte was abducted by the Merkit tribe, an old enemy of Temujin's family. The old wolf inside him awoke, hungry, cold, merciless. He rode across the frozen steppe, gathered allies, and tore the Merkit camp apart. When he found Borte, she whispered, "I knew you would come." For Temujin, her words were more powerful than any coronation. That night, Temujin stood under a moon the color of white steel. The wind howled around him, but his thoughts were sharper than ever. He imagined a world where tribes did not betray each other, where warriors rode under one banner, where order replaced chaos, where leadership was earned, not inherited. A world where he, Temujin, commanded destiny itself. He whispered to the empty sky, "I will not just survive, I will rule." The steppe did not answer, but it listened.
The sun rose slowly over the Mongolian steppe, spreading pale gold across a landscape that seemed endless. The grass swayed like an ocean frozen in time, each blade whispering secrets of forgotten battles. Temujin stood at the crest of a hill, the wind tugging at his rough coat of sheepskin. He was no longer the starving orphan child who wandered barefoot across frozen earth. He was a man now, and the world was beginning to feel it. Temujin's family tent, simple, worn, patched with leather, had become a place of quiet movement. Men arrived silently, one by one, drawn to him not by force or fear, but by something else: his fairness, his strange sense of justice in a land that rarely knew the word. Among the nomads, most leaders ruled by birthright. Temujin ruled by loyalty. He shared food equally, worked beside his men, listened more than he spoke. Slowly, Mongols who had no tribe, no protection, no future, gathered at his side. The old warriors whispered, "A storm is forming." And they were right. One afternoon, as the sky darkened with an approaching dust storm, Temujin saw a familiar rider approaching. The horse moved with elegance. The armor glimmered, and the man on its back sat straight and proud. Jamuka, his childhood blood brother. Temujin felt a strange warmth and an unexpected tension rise inside him. Jamuka dismounted, smiling the same charming smile he had as a boy. "Temujin," he said softly, "it has been too long." Their reunion was honest, emotional. They reminisced under the wide sky, drinking warm, fermented mare's milk, laughing about childhood mischief. For a moment, they felt young again. But the night changed them. Jamuka, with his noble background and aristocratic poise, believed leadership belonged to the elite. Temujin believed leadership belonged to the capable. A quiet crack formed between them, small but destined to split the world. Within weeks, warriors began choosing sides. Jamuka's side: aristocratic families, old tribal leaders, noble lineages who feared change. Temujin's side: common herders, orphans, freed slaves, warriors tired of injustice, men who believed the future belonged to the strong, not the well-born. The steppe trembled. The wolves were beginning to circle each other. At night, the wind carried rumors. Two Khans rise, but the steppe can have only one. One evening, while Temujin's young warriors slept in their makeshift camp, a sudden scream tore the night apart. Torchlight exploded across the grass. Arrows rained down like burning stars. Horses shrieked in terror. Warriors leapt up, scrambling for weapons. Jamuka's men had struck without warning. Temujin's camp was thrown into chaos, but he moved with a terrifying calm. His voice, low and commanding,
cut through the panic. Hold the horses, form a circle, protect each other. Even in that night of fire and betrayal, Temujin's presence steadied every man. By sunrise, the survivors gathered around him. Their faces were burned, their bodies exhausted, but their loyalty had been carved into something indestructible. Temujin looked at the rising sun and whispered, "This is the beginning." The steppe erupted into full war. Dust clouds rose where armies clashed. The thunder of hooves echoed across valleys. The sky darkened with arrows. Temujin did not fight like other Mongol leaders. He adapted. He observed. He used strategy. He divided warriors into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. He promoted men based on skill, not birth. He created a spy network. He learned his enemy's weaknesses. He struck fast, hard, and with terrifying precision. Jamuka fought with pride. Temujin fought with purpose, and purpose always prevails. One dusk under a sky that glowed red like blood, the two armies faced each other across a vast plain. Temujin rode to the front, his horse breathing clouds of steam. He raised a single hand. Every warrior behind him fell silent. The wind carried Temujin's low voice. Men do not follow their birth. They follow strength. They follow unity. Fight not for me. Fight for the world we will build. When his hand dropped, the steppe exploded. The battle raged from sunset to moonrise. Swords clashed, bows sang, horses screamed, and the dust turned the sky dark. Temujin moved like a shadow through the chaos, directing, anticipating, commanding. His warriors fought as one body, as if they shared a single mind. Jamuka fought bravely, but that night, the steppe made its choice. Jamuka's lines broke, his warriors fled, and for the first time, the nobles of Mongolia feared Temujin's name. After months of war, Temujin summoned leaders from surviving clans to a massive gathering by the banks of the Anan River. Thousands of warriors stood in a vast circle, their armor glinting under the morning light. The air was silent, heavy, expectant. Then an elder stepped forward. Khan, not Temujin the orphan, not Temujin the outcast, but Temujin, the universal ruler. Genghis Khan. The plains echoed with a roar, and in that thunder of voices, in the breath of 1,000 horses, in the wind sweeping across the steppe, a new world began. The world of Genghis Khan, the Wolf King, the man the earth could not ignore.
Wind swept across the vast Mongol plains as Genghis Khan stood alone at the edge of a cliff, looking out toward an empire not yet conquered. The steppe stretched endlessly behind him, but his eyes were fixed far beyond it, on kingdoms of brick and stone, on cities glittering with wealth, on lands where the horse was not king, but where ambition still ruled the hearts of men. The night was calm, but the world was about to change. Long before Genghis Khan became a name spoken with fear, traders whispered stories of a land far to the east, Cathay, the rich empire of the Jin dynasty. Its walls were high, its cities massive, and its people beyond counting. To a man born in a felt tent on the steppe, these stories were both thrilling and strange. Temujin had grown up hunting rabbits and fighting to survive each winter. But now, as Genghis Khan, he listened to those tales with a different hunger, not of survival, but of destiny. He gathered his generals, Subutai the brilliant, Jebe the fearless, Jelme the loyal, and his sons Joji, Chagatai, Ogedei. When they knelt before him, he spoke in a low, steady voice. Beyond the desert lies a world of walls, and walls fall. The wind carried his words far into the night. Years of raids, scouting, diplomacy, and strategy led to one explosive moment. The Mongol armies rode east like a thunderstorm. Their horses kicked up clouds of dust that looked like rising smoke from a burning world. The Jin generals mocked them. How can wild horsemen break the walls of cities built of stone? They didn't know Genghis Khan had already studied their weaknesses. He learned where the rivers flowed, where the grain grew, where the weak points of their fortresses lay. He adapted Chinese siege engineers into his armies. He built catapults, towers, and battering rams. He used fear like a weapon sharper than any blade. One by one, the great cities fell. Inside the fortress of Zhengdu, modern-day Beijing, panic spread as thousands fled the Mongol arrows that darkened the sky. Families hid in cellars, merchants abandoned their goods, soldiers trembled as the earth shook with the march of Mongol horses. When the capital finally fell, the air smelled of smoke for weeks. The light of burning homes flickered against the night sky like dying stars. The Jin dynasty, proud and ancient, had bowed before a man born in a felt tent. After the fall of the Jin dynasty, the Mongol Empire stretched farther than any nomad had ever dreamed. But Genghis Khan looked west now, toward a land where silk roads carried gold, spices, scholars, and travelers. The Khwarezmian Empire, ruled by Shah Muhammad II. It was powerful, wealthy, and confident, too confident. When Mongol merchants approached the border city of Otrar, carrying gifts and trade, the Shah's governor accused them of being spies. Without trial, without hesitation, he executed them. When news reached Genghis Khan, he said nothing at first. He simply closed his eyes. A silence settled over the great Khan's tent, so deep that even the generals felt the air tighten around them. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. They kill my merchants. They kill my ambassadors. They have chosen war. And the world shivered. The Mongol invasion of Khwarezm was swift, calculated, and unlike anything the world had ever seen. Instead of attacking one city at a time, Genghis split his forces across impossible terrain, mountains, rivers, deserts, and struck all corners at once. No one believed an army could cross the Kizilkum Desert. No one believed siege machines could be carried through mountain passes. No one believed horsemen could appear where no roads existed. But reality did not stop disbelief. Subutai struck from the north. Jebe circled through the mountains. Genghis swept in from the east, and smaller Mongol units appeared deep behind enemy lines, as if the earth itself had birthed them. Entire cities fell before the Khwarezmian rulers even knew which direction the Mongols were coming from. The Shah fled across his own empire, abandoning his people. Genghis Khan did not chase quickly. He did not act with rage. He acted with purpose. Through blazing summer and freezing winter, the Mongols tracked him like wolves. When the Shah finally died on an island in the Caspian Sea, abandoned by all, the name of Genghis Khan had become a force larger than any ruler, larger than any kingdom. It had become inevitable. Some say Genghis Khan wiped out almost 40% of the world's population. Historians debate the numbers, but the fear was real. Cities like Urgench, Nishapur, Merv, once centers of knowledge and trade, were swallowed by fire and dust. Smoke rose so high it blurred the sun. Rivers ran dark with ash. Entire libraries turned to drifting embers in the wind. But in the middle of this destruction, the Mongols enforced new rules. No theft among soldiers, no mistreatment of messengers, religious freedom for all, protection for scholars, artisans, and healers. In chaos, he insisted on order. In destruction, he planted the seeds of a new world. The steppe warlord was becoming something else, a world architect. Wherever the Mongol flag rose, roads were repaired, trade flourished, messages traveled faster than ever before. The empire became a single connected heartbeat from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. For the first time in history, a person could travel thousands of miles without fear. Merchants could cross deserts without being robbed. Scholars carried knowledge across continents. The world grew closer, smaller, more connected.
And all of it was shaped by one man, Genghis Khan, the wolf child who once wandered the cold steppe in hunger. The wind over the steppe carried the scent of winter. Thin clouds drifted across a silver sky as Genghis Khan rode slowly along a ridge overlooking thousands of his warriors. Their horses stood silently, steaming breath rising like smoke in the cold morning air. The Khan looked older now, not weak, just carved deeper by time. The years of battle, the nights without sleep, the storms endured in distant lands, all of them had etched themselves into his face like ancient writing on stone. But his eyes still held that same relentless fire, a fire the world had not yet learned to extinguish. After the fall of Khwarezm, the Mongol Empire stretched so far that even the horizon seemed too small to contain it. The Khan's scouts returned daily with news of distant lands, forests like oceans to the north, deserts that shimmered like gold to the south, cities of stone and iron to the west, and seas that roared like dragons in the Far East. But one message came again and again, whispered with both awe and uncertainty. Beyond the mountains lies a land called Europe. Genghis Khan listened quietly, not with the hunger of a conqueror, but with the curiosity of a man who saw the world as unfinished. The very idea of lands he had never touched stirred something deep within him, a world still unclaimed, a world still unshaped. And so he summoned his greatest general, Subutai, the myth, the mastermind of war. When Subutai knelt before him, Genghis simply whispered, "Show me the edge of the world." The order was simple. The consequences would echo for centuries. Subutai understood the Khan's vision better than anyone. To reach the lands of Europe, they needed not a single army, but a sweeping tide, a force large enough to cross continents. Thus began the rise of the Golden Horde. Tens of thousands of riders gathered under banners the color of molten gold. Their horses moved as one, hooves drumming across the plains like rolling thunder. Families followed behind in wagons, carrying food, tools, and the felt walls of their portable homes. It was not just an army, it was a migrating world. The Mongols moved like a living river, flowing west across mountains, valleys, and frozen rivers. Villages vanished before their arrival, not from destruction, often from fear alone. Those who resisted suffered. Those who submitted thrived. The laws of the Great Khan were clear: justice without mercy, freedom without disorder, unity
without hesitation. The world had never seen anything like it. Europe felt the Mongol arrival long before it saw the riders. Rumors drifted through markets and monasteries. Demons from the east, men who drink the blood of horses, warriors who shoot arrows even while retreating. Fear spread like winter frost. When Subutai's forces approached Kievan Rus, the princes were divided, each protecting their own city, their own pride. The Mongols never attacked divided enemies head-on. They watched, waited. And when the princes finally united, thinking they had grown strong, Subutai closed the trap. The battle on the frozen Kalka River lasted one shocking moment. The Mongols feigned retreat, a perfect illusion. When the Rus cavalry charged, believing victory was within reach, they rode straight into an ambush. Arrows pierced the air like rain. Horses crashed onto the ice. The river cracked beneath the weight of thousands. Hope shattered as quickly as the frozen water beneath them. When the snow settled, the princes were gone. Only silence remained. A silence colder than winter itself. While the horde pushed west, Genghis Khan returned to shaping the heart of his empire. He gathered scholars, craftsmen, translators, doctors, astronomers, men from China, Persia, Central Asia, Arabia. He listened to their ideas, questioned them, debated with them, and then forged something new out of their knowledge. For the first time in history, the world was becoming connected. Messengers carrying the Khan seal could ride thousands of miles without being harmed. Roads were patrolled, bridges built, markets flourished, languages mixed, cultures coexisted under one unifying rule: do not shed blood of the innocent. It was a paradox the world struggled to understand. A conqueror feared for destruction, creating a network that brought an entire continent together. Empires before him had ruled land. Genghis Khan ruled movement. Ideas traveled, sciences spread, trade multiplied. The world was no longer a map of isolated kingdoms. It was becoming one connected body, held together by the iron will of a single man. Even at the height of his power, Genghis Khan refused the luxury of palaces. While emperors in China lived in gold halls and Persian rulers surrounded themselves with marble courts, the great Khan slept each night in a felt tent under the open sky. He preferred the cold wind, the crackle of a small fire, the distant sound of horses grazing nearby. At night, he would sit alone, sharpening his sword, breathing the quiet air, staring at the stars he had grown up beneath as a child. He carried victories lightly, but carried responsibility like a boulder on his shoulders. In those silent nights, when his generals slept, he whispered to the darkness, "The world is large, but a man's life is short." He knew time was catching him. He felt it in his bones. But there was still one more frontier waiting for him, one last horizon that called him forward. Near the end of his life, as age began to press upon him, Genghis Khan made one final decision that would shape history for centuries to come. He began to choose the next rulers, not one son, but all four. He divided the great empire into four vast khanates: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horde in the West. Each ruled by his blood, each loyal to his vision. No empire had ever been built so quickly. No empire had ever been planned so carefully. The world he shaped was not just for him. It was a blueprint for the next 1,000 years. But as he looked across his empire one last time, his heart pulled him toward home, toward the place where everything began. The air was thin and cold in the mountains of western Jia. Snow clung to the high peaks like white shrouds. The wind hummed through the narrow valleys, carrying the faint smell of pine and distant smoke. In the heart of a quiet camp stood a single felt tent, simple, almost humble, yet guarded by thousands. Inside, the great Khan lay beneath a thick blanket of sheepskin, eyes half closed, breath slow, like a fire burning low but steady. He was older now, his hair touched with frost, his hands marked by decades of rains, swords, and storms. But even in weakness, he was still Genghis Khan, the man whose name could still silence armies. The generals gathered outside his tent, Subutai, now gray and stern, Jebe, quieter than ever, Ogedei, Chagatai, and Tolui standing side by side, their silhouettes blurred in the dim torchlight like ghosts from the Khan's long journey. None of them spoke. In the cold stillness, every breath felt heavy. Inside the tent, Genghis Khan opened his eyes as if sensing them. The candle beside him flickered, light dancing across the walls. He slowly lifted a hand, not to grasp a sword or command an army, but to feel the warmth of the flame. A small smile touched his lips. "Fire," he whispered. "It has followed me since childhood." His voice was soft, worn, not the roar of a conqueror, but the murmur of an old man remembering the journey home. As the night deepened, memories drifted through his mind like gentle snowflakes. He remembered the smell of milk simmering in his mother's pot. He remembered the bitter winters when he walked barefoot across frozen soil. He remembered Berthe, the woman who held his heart steady when the world tried to break him. He remembered Jamuka, friend, brother, and fate's rival. And above all, he remembered the steppe, the endless sky, the freedom, the wind that shaped him more than any teacher ever could. The world had changed under his hands, but in his final hours, his heart returned to the beginning, to the small boy who once ran across the grasslands chasing a dog, laughing under a sky too large to understand. Ogedei, his third son, entered the tent quietly. He knelt beside his father, gripping his trembling hands. "Father, stay with us," he whispered. But the Khan's eyes were calm. The world does not bend to the wishes of men. Even Khans must leave when the wind calls. He paused, breathing slowly. "Promise me, promise you will keep the world united." Ogedei bowed his head. "I promise." Outside, the guards heard the faint murmur of Genghis Khan's final order. Not a command of war, not a demand for conquest, but a wish for unity, a wish for the empire to survive without tearing itself apart. It was the gentlest command he had ever given. The candlelight flickered again. The wind outside paused, as if even nature leaned in closer. Genghis Khan's eyes traced the shadow of the tent roof, as though he were watching the sky one last time. "Do you hear it?" he whispered. Ogedei looked up. "What, father?" "The steppe, calling me home." Those were his last words. His breath slowed, his fingers stilled, his heartbeat softened into silence. And then, with a final exhale, peaceful as a sigh beneath an open sky, the great Khan slipped into eternity. In that quiet moment, the world felt as though it had stopped. Even the fires outside the tent burned without crackling. The horses lowered their heads. The wind did not move. The man who changed the face of the earth had finally become part of it. At dawn, his body was wrapped in white felt. His sons and generals stood behind, heads bowed, faces hidden in the cold morning mist. There was no grand ceremony, no palace mausoleum, no marble tomb. The Mongols followed ancient tradition. A great man must return to the earth quietly. A small group of riders carried his body into the mountains, choosing a place none would ever reveal. Legends say the ground trembled when they buried him. Others say the grass grew greener there than anywhere else. No one knows the truth. Some believe the secret rests with the wind. Some say the river near his grave changes course each century, as if protecting him. And some whisper that the great Khan still rides somewhere across the eternal steppe. When the news spread through the camps, warriors wept. Cities paused. Courts from China to Persia stood in silence. But the empire he built did not crumble. His sons took up the reins. His generals continued the campaigns he had planned. And within a few decades, the Mongol Empire stretched farther than any in human history. From the Pacific Ocean to the Black Sea, from Siberia to the Himalayas, the legacy of a boy once exiled from his own tribe. The world he shaped still echoes today in laws, in trade routes, in cultures that once never knew each other. Many years later, old Mongol shepherds would sit near campfires and tell their grandchildren, "When the wind whistles across the steppe, listen closely. You may hear hoofbeats. You may hear the Khan riding home." And on nights when the moon was thin and pale, some claimed they saw a lone rider on the horizon, moving like a shadow, disappearing into the grasslands. Whether legend or memory, the world never forgot him. Genghis Khan, the child of the wolf legend, the master of the horse, the conqueror of continents, the man who rose from nothing and reshaped everything. His story ended in a quiet tent beneath a cold sky. But his echo still rides across history. Soft, powerful, endless.